Hello everyone and welcome back to the F2 show by Inside F2. Here we go then, Formula 2 is back for 2025 and Formula 2 in 2025 starts right here with Inside F2. Formula 2 commentator Chris McCarthy and P1's Tommy Bellingham with us for this one. Tommy, let's come to you first. Welcome to the podcast, a little debut for you. Big question to start off with. Have you told Matt you're cheating on him by coming on the podcast today?
No, I haven't. It'd be a nice surprise for him to be able to watch me on a podcast, so I'm sure he'll be watching.
Love it. And Chris, welcome back to the podcast. The news obviously broke last week that you are the new Formula 2 commentator, replacing Alex Jakes, as we said at the top. How excited are you to be, you're the voice of Formula 2, mate?
Oh, it still sounds weird for someone else to say it out loud to me. Massive thank you. It's a surreal feeling. I mean, I got to see both Will Buxton and Alex Jakes over the winter, not long after I was told about it. And they were both huge inspirations to me, both when I started watching motorsport with Will and then when I started commentating with Alex. So, to be continuing that journey is a big task, first of all. But, one I'm incredibly excited for. It was always my goal to get to Formula 2. So for it to be happening is quite surreal, to be honest. But I've never been this excited for a season, it's fair to say. So, and I think we've got a good grid, as we're going to find out on the show. I think we've got a really good grid this year. So, very excited.
It's going to be a good season, isn't it? You've also casually been commentating on four-time world champion Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton in a Ferrari F1 testing last week. What would teenage Chris have thought if he knew that in 2025 you'd be commentating on Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen?
That was crazy. I mean, that was sort of where we made the announcement as well. It was nice to. It was all something that came up fairly last minute, to be honest, and a really nice way to do my own pre-season testing, if you like, and actually get behind the mic a little bit. A bit of a big one to do testing, but a lovely experience to commentate testing for the first time. My first time commentating F1, and I got to work with Alex Jakes for a while as well, which was a first and a really nice experience. But seeing Lewis Hamilton come out of the pit lane, talking about it, throwing to Ted Kravitz in the pit lane was one I'll definitely never forget as well. My dad still hasn't got over that one, to be honest. Really, really fun experience.
Love that. Listen, we're all buzzing for you, mate, and it's thoroughly well deserved as well. Before we start the podcast, we've just hit 245,000 subscribers, which we're incredibly grateful for. Inside F2 is a community of motorsport fans who love Formula 2, and you know how it works. The bigger Inside F2 gets, the more drivers we can have on, the more fun features we can do, and the more fun guests we can have on, like Chris and like Tommy. So please do follow us, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments. That's what I particularly enjoy, reading your thoughts in the comments. And let's see if we can hit 250,000 subscribers for Australia. That would be really cool if we could do that. But let's get into it then. Before we talk about Formula 2 this year, we've obviously got 4 Formula 2 drivers from last year graduating to Formula 1 for 2025. Kimi Antonelli, Ollie Bearman, Gabby Bortoletto, and Isaac Hadjar. Jack Doohan obviously also graduates as well, albeit not directly. Franco Colapinto stepping in the Williams at the end of last season as well. Formula 1 teams seem to be trusting Formula 2 graduates again, Chris. Is that fair to say? And would you say that Formula 2 is probably in the best place it's been for a little while?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the most graduates that have ever gone up directly from a season. So I think Formula 2 is definitely in statistically the best place it's ever been. For graduates to go straight up is a huge success for the series. All success stories of F1 Academy programs as well. So it shows that those Academy programs are working as well. And I think the fight to get those seats are even more, even more important now as well. Particularly Kimi Antonelli, who's been supported all the way from karting for Mercedes, all the way throughout. So, I think for Formula 2, it's a massive success. It was a little bit of a long time coming, to be honest. There was for Formula 1, we had some Formula 2 drivers, some champions sitting on the bench for a little while. And I think at the start of last season, we were all really excited about, the presence of some of the drivers, Ollie Bearman, Kimi Antonelli coming in as this generational talent. And it felt like this was going to be a season with a new car where there were going to be some drivers coming through and straight onto the grid. And I'm glad at the amounts that went up. I think people were surprised at how many went up, but I think they were all deserving drivers. So this is going to bring even more competitiveness, I think, in Formula One to stay on the grid. I think drivers are going to be looking over their shoulder now, and drivers in testing did speak about that as well. I think the F1 drivers are really welcoming this, and a lot of those drivers actually raced each other in karting. So it's cool to see them racing each other again now in Formula One.
Yeah, definitely. Tommy, how important is it for Formula One to have the Premier Feeder Series feeding drivers into Formula One? And who are you most excited about seeing out of those drivers that we've mentioned?
Oh, yeah, it's a massive thing. And I'll echo Chris's thoughts that I think it's a great thing for the series and Formula One in general. I think, personally, I found that for a long time, F2 drivers were getting kind of overshadowed. And I do wonder, maybe going back to you kind of George Russells and Charles Leclerc that kind of lit up that series, that may, and this is just talking from maybe like an outside perspective from a lot of Formula One fans, but maybe there was that almost perspective of like you had to like dominate the championship, win it, and that's the only way you're going to even get a look in. But I think the fact that we had those unusual moments where we saw like a Liam Lawson come in mid-season, Colapinto, and it almost, and Behrman as well, of course, and it kind of made Formula One teams realize, okay, these guys are all ready. Even if you finished fourth or fifth in the championship in F2, they're ready to go, and they are very, very, very talented indeed. So I'm glad that had a massive knock-on effect. That, no offense to them, but some of the kind of midfield drivers and the veterans that had kind of been in the midfield for ages and kind of just sit there in the midfield, and you kind of want to see some new blood, and wow, has it kind of happened all in one go, if you like.
Is the hope though, Tommy, that we don't get 4 or 5 moving into Formula One all at once and then not see any for a couple of years again? Obviously, we've had people like Felipe Drugovich win the championship and just not be able to find a seat, right?
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't mean that kind of this new crop of drivers have kind of missed the mark, because a lot of Formula 2 is very much like talent and timing kind of comes into it as well, of when you kind of peak at the right time. But they've all got a great chance, and I'm hoping that it is just that kind of knock-on effect that Formula One teams now know that they can trust some young talent because they're like hungry and show what they can do.
Absolutely. Let's talk about Formula 2 in 2025 then. 8 returning drivers, 13 rookies, 12 of them jumping directly from Formula 3, Chris, obviously including Leo Fornaroli. So much to talk about. Where shall we start? Shall we start with returning drivers? Jack Crawford, obviously the highest returning driver, finishing 5th in last year's championship. Victor Martin steps up from remains with ART as well. And Richard Verschoor returning for a 4th season in Formula 2. Is it essentially win the title or end up in Formula E for that lot? Am I allowed to say that? Is that a bit offensive, Formula E?
Yeah, I mean, for the returning drivers, they've got, I think, a huge challenge on their hand with the drivers coming up from Formula 3. We've got the top 8 coming up from Formula 3 this season, and they put on one of the best, arguably the best championship fight that ever existed in FI Formula 3. So that's going to make it super competitive, and I think it's going to make it a real level playing field. So as you mentioned, for those returning drivers in the likes of Victor Martins, Richard Verschoor, probably their last stab at it now, similar to what we saw with Dennis Hauger, who's off in Indy next now. They may be looking at other opportunities if it doesn't work out for them this year. Victor Martins are very good in testing, to be honest, as did, I know you were over there, Fraser, ART Grand Prix in general, looking very, very quickly. Ratomo Miata was very quick as well. He will be hoping that this could be a really good season for him, as will the team, because across both categories they've struggled in recent years. So I think for them, they want to be in the shop window this year to either get in kind of a reserve role going forward, and if they can get in a reserve role, then they can go off and do other things elsewhere whilst sitting on the bench, so to speak. So I think for those drivers, it's a real critical season this year.
Absolutely. Tommy, we speak on the podcast quite a bit about whether there should be a cap on how many seasons a driver can do in Formula 2 to prevent some drivers from potentially hogging seats and stopping new talent coming through. What's your thoughts on that? Would you like to see a cap and the amount of seasons in Formula 2, or are you happy for drivers like Richard? This is no disrespect to drivers who are returning, but coming back for a fourth season, for example.
Yeah, it does seem like too much to be in for that long. You kind of need to make your mark and then see, because in my opinion, Formula 2 shouldn't be a kind of, it should be a stepping stone to Formula 1, not I'm almost there, I'm just going to enjoy this series for years and years and years. Not to say that, you can't, I think maybe some people unfairly get criticized for doing well after a certain number of seasons, and that's used as a kind of way to sort of say that, it's not that impressive. It's still obviously impressive to do well, but you don't want to see drivers kind of sticking into the the championship for so long. But it's just crazy how, and this is kind of the Max Verstappen knock-on effect, but it is crazy how, when I started watching, the age range has just dropped and dropped and dropped, and now you can be 24 in Formula 2, and it's like, no, you're never going to get there, which is crazy.
No, it is, isn't it? And, some of these drivers are incredibly talented. And as you say, someone like Jack Crawford, for example, Chris, it takes some drivers. Jack Crawford came into Formula 2 as a 17-year-old. He's 19 in his third season. And he's still younger than some of the drivers who are stepping into Formula 2 for the first time, right? Some drivers just get there a lot quicker, and then it takes them a bit longer, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he's, he's part of the Aston Martin program now as well. So that's a good position for him to be in, really. He's the only real driver, apart from their F1 Academy driver, that's part of that. So if he's to go and have a good season, it just puts Felipe Drugovich under a lot of pressure in the position he's in. Particularly if he's to go and win the championship, for example, then he essentially, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't use the word irrelevant, but he almost goes ahead of Felipe Drugovich, really. So it could be a massive season for him. And that's what I think is the benefit of doing a couple of seasons in Formula 2. It's getting within the right team, getting yourself up the grid, maybe finding yourself as part of an F1 junior program, where then you can get yourself into a testing role, into a reserve role, and do something like Oscar Piastri did. Go and spend a season going around with an F1 team, or go off and do something like the World Endurance Championship while you wait for your opportunity. So I think Richard Verschoor is an interesting case. He's had to really work his way up the grid almost, and he's now in a position where he's almost back where he started in his single-seater career. So I think this could be a really good opportunity for him this season, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Yeah, agreed. He will become the most experienced driver in Formula 2 history, assuming he does every Formula 2 race this year. 13 rookies this season, including Formula 3 champion Leo Fornaroli, Gabriele Mini, Arvid Lindblad. Who are you most excited about seeing, Chris? You've watched all of these guys in Formula 3. Who gives you the biggest buzz?
For me, I'd say Arvid Lindblad, actually. All of those 8 drivers that fought for the title in F3 are going to be exciting. But Arvid Lindblad winning the Formula Regional Oceania Championship was a huge thing for him. He'd suffered with losing championship fights in his career. He had that massive lead for those who may have not followed his career path. He had a massive lead in the Italian F4 and lost the championship to Casper Stuka in pretty dramatic fashion. And then he was in the Formula 3 championship fight, double win at Silverstone, and then kind of fell off with a couple of disappointing qualifying performances. So there was a pattern forming there, but he turned that round and proved he can be a champion. And I think that's going to give him the huge confidence boost needed, along with the Red Bull backing. Campos are at a point now where you're thinking, they've got to win a championship sooner or later. And he and Pepe Marti together, I think, could be a really damaging combination for the rest of the field. So also Christian Horner has spoken many times about him already as a Formula 3 driver, that, if he performs well, then he's almost in with a chance. So he could apply a lot of pressure on Isaac Hadjar and Yuki Tsunoda. We talked a lot about, could this be the end of drivers going into F1? But as drivers go into F1, they can leave as quickly. So I think he can leave F1 teams kind of scratching their heads a bit if he's to perform well next season, and that's why I'm excited about him.
Yeah, definitely. Tommy, excited about seeing Arvid Lindblad, and I know you guys talk about it on your podcast as well, the Red Bull dynamic, and obviously Yuki Tsunoda, he's going into his 5th season at RB Red Racing Bulls, Minardi, whatever they're called these days. Could he put pressure on Yuki Tsunoda, Isaac Hadjar, and obviously if Yuki Tsunoda was to go elsewhere at the end of the season, would he be the perfect fit for the Racing Bulls team?
I think so, definitely. You look at the Formula 2, grid, and obviously a lot of them are in those kind of junior categories, and a lot of that, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on which way of the coin it lands for you, is that timing of who's in those Formula 1 seats when you actually hit your peak and whether there's room for you at the end. But we know that Red Bull, while can get criticised a lot for kind of being very cutthroat, it also is great for the drivers that are the ones being promoted when they're very cutthroat, because it gives them the opportunity that if they do deliver, so if we do see Lindblad have a fantastic season and Hadjar is struggling, for example, in Formula 1, Red Bull are not going to be afraid to make that switch, and they've even done it before very, very quickly as well. So it's a great opportunity for him, and he does it like a real talent as well. So that is the kind of, it is funny how someone like Hadjar becomes that person that's putting the pressure on the kind of Red Bull Junior to get in there, but then as soon as you're promoted, you've got the next kid coming along that's putting the pressure on you, and it's cutthroat, but some would argue that that's what Formula 1 should be. It should be the best 20 drivers in the world.
It is brutal though, isn't it? Especially being part of that Red Bull program, it is brutal. He already has the super license points without even turning a wheel competitively in Formula 2 this year. Already has the super license points. He can become Formula 2's youngest ever winner if he wins in his first 6 rounds of the Formula 2 season, if he wins before Barcelona. Could we see potentially, if he goes and wins a couple of races in the first few rounds, Tommy, do you think we could potentially see that swap even happen mid-season if he's doing really well and Red Bull, don't see a future with one of their drivers? Do you think we could see that mid-season?
It would be savage to do it so quickly. But you also wouldn't put it past them. And if he's got the super license points, they don't have to worry about that. The whole kind of waiting to the end of the season, doing Abu Dhabi tests and all that kind of stuff. And if I believe he's already done the kind of Abu Dhabi tests with them, so they'll already have data and know a lot about him and already know his kind of potential in a Formula 1 car just from that anyway. So it could, if he has a great season, it could put a huge amount of pressure. But I do think it kind of goes down to, depends, hopefully not for his sake, how bad or good Isaac does basically in that Red Bull alongside Tsunoda, because we've seen drivers before that haven't performed against Tsunoda. They're quite cutthroat and it's off you go.
Yeah, definitely an exciting dynamic to watch as the season unfolds. Could potentially see him in an FP1, I guess, or a couple of FP1s as the season goes on. Another driver who could be involved in a few FP1s is Ritomo Miata. We've already touched on him, Chris. Obviously moved to ART for 2025. We know he's the Super Formula champion from 2023, heavily backed by Toyota. You've alluded to testing a little bit, Chris. He looked very good in testing. ART looked very good in testing. He didn't get a podium last year. 19 drivers got a podium last year in Formula 2. He wasn't one of those 19 drivers, which is crazy. Are you expecting better things from him this year in Formula 2, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has to. He's gone to ART and he has to deliver now. They're delivering a car. Well, one, he's got the best looking car on the grid for me. But they are. His car looks fantastic. But they are. So I hope we see it towards the front. But they are delivering a car that looks very, very quick. And I just, for his sake, hope that we see him perform better, because there's definitely a strong link there for him with the Toyota backing. He's already been in a Haas this year, and there could clearly be a possibility for him there to do some more testing and who knows where it could go. If he could go on a title run, then there could be opportunities for him to go into some sort of development role. He's one of the busiest drivers, I think, in motorsport. I think he raced in pretty much everything last year. He did World Endurance, European Le Mans. He was in the 24-hour, and he even did some IMSA, I think, as well. So he raced just about everything. My notes on him are hugely extensive because of that. So, he's keeping, his options very, very open. But I think his goal is to try and get to Formula One, and particularly the link with Toyota and Haas.
He's like you, mate. You just about commentated on everything last season as well, right? That's how you know.
There you go.
He was commentating on everything he was racing in. Sorry, the Toyota Haas thing seems to be snowballed in a little bit. It seems to be that they're tightening their relationship. Can you see a situation where Toyota want to put a driver in a Haas seat? And if so, could that be Ritomo Miata off the back of a good Formula 2 season? And if that was the case, who would he replace out of Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman? I mean, Esteban Ocon's obviously gone there to be a lead driver, right? Could Ferrari end up having to move Ollie Behrman potentially?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because, with Miata, obviously, I do wonder how much the Toyota connection, we've seen historically in Formula One, particularly with the Japanese engine manufacturers, they do like to have a driver with their kind of engine deal. Honda and even Toyota in the past, I think Nakajima was part of the Williams deal back in the day as well. So
Kobayashi as well.
Yeah, exactly. So they do like to have that if they end up, really kind of pushing Haas into almost becoming a Toyota manufacturer team, which who knows if that could happen later down the line. It's a difficult one because, again, looking, and this is just kind of, we joked earlier about age and how the perception of age in Formula 2 has changed, and being kind of 25 and having Ollie Behrman, who's a lot younger and just come into the sport and really has sort of got a lot of hype around him after his great performances. It really would, to me, rely on an Ollie Behrman maybe going elsewhere, whether that's Ferrari once Hamilton retires, if he does that well, and it kind of is that ladder they want to kind of have that stepping stone for him at Ferrari. Ocon, I feel like, is kind of locked in there as a experienced driver now, and I think you'd have to do have a pretty terrible year for them to get rid of him already, personally.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's fair enough. It's going to be an interesting season, isn't it? Watching Ritomo Miata and watching what Haas end up doing, and obviously with Cadillac coming in, I wonder whether Ferrari might, they're obviously funding an engine, aren't they, for Cadillac? So whether Ollie Behrman potentially ends up going there at some point in the future. Speaking of Cadillac, could you see a situation, Chris? We've already spoken about Jack Crawford, but could you see a situation where we're hearing Colton Herta this, Colton Herta that? If we're an American Formula 2 champion in Jack Crawford, if he goes and wins the championship, for example, could he throw himself into the frame for a Cadillac seat in 2026?
I mean, possibly. I mentioned before he's part of the Aston Martin setup, isn't he? So I think that's maybe what he's got his eye on. If he can perform well, he will give them something to think about. They've not changed their lineup in about 4 years or whatever. So they might get to a point where they consider doing that next season or the year after. So, and I think that's maybe what he's going to keep his eye on. But of course, if he's to go and win the championship as an American Formula 2 champion, then there's no reason why. We've seen people do it in the past, leave. We saw the likes of Oscar Piastri do it. We've seen drivers leave, their affiliated F1 driver program. So it's absolutely possible. And he's got a really good opportunity this year as the highest returning seeded driver. So, and he's with a great team as well in DAM. So he's got a really good opportunity.
Is that the strongest lineup on the grid for you, Chris? Potentially, Jack Crawford, Kushmani. I guess High Tech also pretty good lineup. Who else? ART, I guess. ART have also got a very strong lineup. Victor Martins, Miata.
Yeah, I mean Luke Browning and Dino. But I mean, if Pepe Marti could have a more consistent season, him and Arvid Lindblad is very good. I mean, obviously he just ran into a lot of DNFs last season, but his raw pace in Formula 3 was very, very good. But Dino and Luke, two champions there at High Tech. You got a Frecker champion and a GB3 champion as well. Two drivers I think you might not initially consider as championship contenders, but I think could be ones to watch. And High Tech always come in with very, very strong lineups. They've done it year on year, and I think they're gonna do it again this season. So I definitely keep an eye on both of those drivers, and I think they'll work well together as well. Yeah. I don't think they'll be banging heads in that garage. I think they'll work well as a unit.
You know the drill. No team orders in Formula 2. Tommy, any driver lineups that stand out for you in Formula 2 this year?
I think Prema obviously, traditionally used to be that team where you just looked at Prema and went, "That's who's going to win the championship," and not so much maybe anymore. Obviously, Sebastian Montoya is maybe a bit unknown. Got that kind of pressure of his dad's name, a driver that I used to absolutely love, which kind of works in your favour sometimes, but also we've seen with the likes of like Mick Schumacher, sometimes the weight of carrying that name and you're not performing kind of makes things worse. But then Mini as well, I think him last year did an amazing job in F3, so close to that championship. And I think his consistency was very impressive. I think he only won one race and almost nearly won the entire championship, which we've kind of seen carry on in F2 now, where you can kind of only win one or two races and still win the championship, just because there's so many competitive drivers that it is all about consistency. So I think that Gabriele Mini and the fact that he's already shown that kind of consistency will be like a very strong asset, because maybe you can kind of impress Formula One teams by being exciting and electric and maybe winning a few races, but can you win a championship by being arguably Antonelli is a great example of he was already kind of destined to be in Formula One, so that worked out as his advantage. But if he had to go for the championship, there were certain moves during last season where you think maybe just wait for the next corner or DRS, which is great to see from an entertainment point of view, and I absolutely loved it. But it's that kind of consistency, cool head that sometimes can impress the F1 teams.
Yeah, definitely. I tell you what, Tommy, that is a lovely segue into. I want to know, Chris. So you rewind to December last year. We had you and Alex Brundle on our season review podcast,
right?
And I asked you early doors who your 2025 champion would be. Do you remember who you said?
Okay. I think I said Gabriele Mini.
You did. So yourself, Alex Brundle, and Alex Jakes all said Gabriele Mini for the championship in 2025. Do you stick with that, Chris, or have you changed your mind over the winter?
Do I have to? Can I change my mind? If I change my mind and he wins it, I look really silly, don't I? But I actually, in testing, I said Arvid Lindblad, so I think I have to go in that again. Arvid Lindblad for me, I think, and the only reason I say that now is because of the championship win he got over the course of the winter between now and then in New Zealand. I think that was all he needed as a driver. I think that championship win, it was his first one in single-seater racing, and I think that's going to make him incredibly dangerous. But Gabriele Mini will run him all the way to the title. I think that's going to be, they'll be the top two for me.
Tommy, who's your pick for the title in 2025?
Well, I was going to go for Mini, but now that seems quite boring that you said that everyone else has also predicted him. But I was thinking him, so I'll stick with that, because I think what he did in F3 last year is impressive, and he's with a great team. Even though obviously Prema didn't have the season that a lot of the kind of known to expect from them, I think he'll have a great season still.
Definitely. There you go then. Gabriele Mini, I'm clipping that, and we're coming back to that at the end of the season. And Arvid Lindblad for you, Chris. Okay, listen, before we go, Tommy, tell us a little bit about what's coming up on P1 for fans to look out for between now and the start of the season.
Basically, what to look out for is us looking very, very, very tired indeed, waking up for about 4 a.m. for the first 3 Formula One races. But at least the excitement is there. Obviously, us covering it from home, we cover, do podcasts after every practice, qualifying, sprints, races as well. So we're very busy, and of course the schedule being Australia China and Japan starting the year. It's a
Yeah.
lot of early starts for us in the UK, but we can't complain because a lot of the time people overseas have it a lot worse when they're trying to watch the races. So excited for both Formula One and Formula 2 back. I really like the fact that Formula 2 are kind of straight in there as well, and we get to watch them straight away. I wasn't the biggest fan of when they kind of changed that the series to alternate with Formula 3, and I must admit, sorry, probably not the best thing to say on this podcast, but it kind of weighed my interest a little bit because you kind of the momentum of the season. But I really like this format now, and looking at the calendar, it's nice to have more Formula 2 races to enjoy because it should be part of that Formula 1 package. So yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we're getting back to how Formula 2 should be, definitely. And we look forward to seeing some of your content on P1. Chris, I guess you're also going to be up at ridiculous hours commentating on Formula 2 and Formula 3 in Melbourne, right?
Yeah. I mean, we do it all from here, so it's just going to be very, very similar times. So looking forward to it, and can't wait to get started. I think it's going to be an amazing season. So no idea who's going to be champion, to be honest. So we'll find out. We'll find out in about 14 rounds.
Definitely. We're looking forward to listening to you in the commentary box for 2025. And that's all we got time for today. My thanks to Chris and to Tommy for joining me on today's show. As I said earlier, lots coming up from us before the start of the season. We've got driver interviews with Jack Crawford, Sebastian Montoya and Joshua Dirksen, either out now or coming out over the next couple of days for you to watch or to listen to. So keep your eyes peeled for that. We've also got our pre-season predictions video from the Inside F2 team coming out very soon, which I know you guys always enjoy, frankly, mocking us, to be honest with you, with our ridiculous and wrong answers. But yeah, you know what to do. Make sure you subscribe to make sure that you don't miss any of that content coming out over the next few weeks. But from me, Fraser Ford, and all of us here at Inside F2, we'll see you next time.